All right. We are officially live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk. And our discussion today, we're going to start with on this day, 420, for those who understand what 420 is all about, to all the 420 celebratory people. Hello. So we felt this was a great time to introduce to you guys some things. We're going to have a green discussion. We're going to talk about cannabis and mental health. So I want to welcome everybody. If you have any questions or anything, please, put it in the post. If those are live that have questions, we'd be more willing to answer anything if you are live. But in the meantime, I am Asha Sims. I'm a licensed clinical mental health therapist. I'm also known as the chakra therapist. And in my role as a clinician, I am also a medical cannabis advisor. And this role is where we help those that have a desire to use cannabis but need more guidance, particularly those who have mental health issues, on doing an assessment to see what is occurring, to know what is the best approach for you. We have here Kiara. Kiara, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kiara Butler. I am a licensed clinical mental health clinician associate in the state of North Carolina, but I am currently living in a state where marijuana is in fact legal. So I live in Washington, and I'm getting a little bit of experience with the dispensary side of things and exposure, trying to connect people with mental health and cannabis.
I love it. I love it. Just the aspect, like I said, this is for all. Now I'm here in North Carolina. Unfortunately, where North Carolina does have a lot more regulations on it. So it is that thing, and that's why we're freely talking about this, because this is for everyone in all aspects. And the purpose of what we're discussing today is to explain uh, or to release any false conceptions, but even giving you the information you need to make informed consent on what you do choose to partake in, by understanding the benefits and the risk as well. I think we all need to just be aware before we make decisions. So we're going to have a real conversation, no judgment, no shame. With this is just education and awareness about how cannabis can interact with mental health. So if anybody is viewing or anything, I always say just drop in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in. And if you have any questions on this particular subject, please drop it in there and we'll try to get to your answers. So, Kiara, as a clinician and you worked in the substance abuse field, tell me from your perspective at this time, what are you seeing most when it comes to cannabis? Because we can say cannabis on the rise. We feel like everybody's talking about it, but there's a lot of people who don't talk about it. But in the mental health treatment, if you worked in substance abuse, what are you seeing now when it comes to cannabis and mental health?
I am seeing that there is a strained relationship with what it looks like to use something that feels like it's more on the holistic side, but it's not widely accepted and less accessible to use. And it feels hard to be kind of classified with other substance use disorders. So I'm seeing a little bit of confusion and push and pull when it comes to actually being able to properly provide treatment, because it's hard to kind of classify the needs based on a lot of the information that has been provided.
Mhm. And I think that's the thing, because it's been in some areas more taboo than beneficial. So is that line that people across are afraid to partake because of the taboo on the topic of cannabis. And it will also depend on where you live, on how you approach the topic and when it comes to it. So as we talk about cannabis and mental health, let's talk about some of the things we see that most people tend to use cannabis. I know anxiety is one, and we'll go into more about how it can impact anxiety. We're just hitting things briefly, but what are you seeing that is drawing most people to use cannabis?
Anxiety, of course, depression. One of the biggest ones that I think we classify subjectively is trauma. The way that we
Mhm.
cope with kind of taking in information or lack thereof and desensitization to a lot of the experiences we're having, kind of using that as a way out and outlet to just relax I
Mm-hmm.
will say for disorders like bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorders, I don't really see those as much anymore because the information is coming out that those are probably medications we want to stay away from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But usually for our more regulatory disorders, cannabis is found to be a main coping use.
And I think that's interesting. Like you said, trauma we have to look at. We're talking about anxiety, we talk about depression, and it goes back to also the nervous system regulation. I think many is that thing of helping you to calm down. And we'll talk more about when it goes into dependency or when it's beneficial. But that nervous system regulation, that's the end talk that everybody is like, how do I regulate my nervous system to avoid stress? And I think when we talk about cannabis and the role, one of the things I have that many people have a hard time understanding or accepting in the role, but tell them a little bit about how our brain has receptors for THC. Explain a little bit about that.
Well, our brain, it's not just our brain, but our entire body. Our body is responsible for withholding something called the endocannabinoid system. There is a receptor called anhydride in our brain that matches THC, the molecular structure of it. So when it is introduced into our bodies, it is not rejected. Instead, it can bind onto different receptors, especially when we start to provide things like intention to send the cannabis to different parts for healing that promotes relaxation alongside that lovely deep breathing that is usually occurring if we are inhaling. And overall sends the body a response that it can actually relax.
Mm. And so that's that thing, that feeling of people wanting something that can relax them to help offset the what their nervous system is really experiencing in that. Um, So when we and working with our clients that do use, I always say I'm a plant friendly therapist because I do love the use of plant medicine, and I just hate that North Carolina is not a state that is allowing it at this time. But being a medical cannabis advisor, being uh, a psychedelic assisted therapist too, and using other plants to help process some of the emotions and reset our nervous system. Why do you feel, as we use this, or how some choose to use cannabis for their symptoms? Why do you feel some people feel relief when some people feel anxious or paranoid? And I think that's the difference because everything ain't for everybody. And depending on, and that's why, as in the role of clinicians and medical cannabis advisors, our role is to see what you have going on to understand if this is going to benefit you or have more uh, offsets on what is already occurring. So, you want to talk a little bit about how some people may be more anxious or have paranoia when they partake compared to others?
Yes, ma'am. So I will say there is something really important to take into account is it's like prescription. So everybody's body is different. Genetics are different, mental health history, the age and the stage of your brain development, the frequency of use, how long you've been using. There are so many things to kind of go into account, just as if you were to go to the doctor
Mm-hmm.
and they let you know, hey, this prescription might work for this, and we have all of these different side effects. So, specifically, when it comes to things like strains, just like prescriptions, we want to try and match things up for the needs of the brain and the body. So, things for certain mental health disorders, we want to steer away from sativas. Sativas are usually our uppers. They make you salsa, they kind of make you move. And essentially, if we think about it as a doorway to our brain, it's kind of like cracking that doorway wide open.
Mm. Now, so that's interesting. When we say doorway, why do people call marijuana a gateway? Do you feel it's a gateway drug?
So I do feel it is essentially a gateway drug, but it's a gateway to behaviors more so than using other drugs. It does kind of put, depending on our strain again, uh, it kind of puts us in a different state. Now, some people utilize cannabis and they microdose and they find that they have more motivation just getting a couple hits out of whatever they're doing or a couple drinks if they've taken a piece of an edible, and they're able to function versus some people feeling like all I do is sit here and play video games and all I do is eat.
Hmm.
So if we
Hmm.
don't pair it right, it can be a gateway for sure.
That's a good point. And I think, and that's what part of this is getting understanding of what what is a gateway, how it impacts your body, the chemical response. And like you said, as clinicians, it is important for us to look at all the things that they're dealing with, predepositions as well. If you already deal with anxiety, if you already, like you said, the schizoaffective or schizophrenia, with those things that take you into different realms, then you have to be careful of not including something that can induce psychosis at that point. And I think that's the part where you have to be concerning, because it is such thing as substance abuse induced disorders. Now, as we're talking about the cannabis use, and I know you were saying, and part of our role as medical cannabis advisors is assisting those, especially those who have access to dispensaries, where the dispensaries, uh, what you need, the strands, is almost like going to the grocery store. Oh, you need, got cancer, you need to sleep, you need to rest, or you need this. Oh, you need to stay awake. So they have it. Now, we were talking before about how sometimes we have to be careful because of the amount of THC that is in the product can be way too much of a percentage, that some people, I just want all of it. And you, too much can be too much sometimes. You want to talk a little bit about that percentages in
Yes, ma'am.
THC? Mm-hmm.
So I think this is something that is really important, especially for chronic cannabis users, is to talk about how essentially cannabis has changed in the last 20 years. So
Mm-hmm.
alone, the THC potency really in the early 2000s was 5 to 10%. Now, if we sit here and we look at a lot of our strains, they're running in our 18 to 30s. So this is something to take into account on how it might increase anxiety, mood swings, panic, psychotic symptoms. This is also important in taking into account, and this is with really deep diving into more information. When you get a hold of your strains, there are these things called terpenes, and the terpenes are really what's responsible for providing the effects of
Mm-hmm.
said strain. So those terpenes provide kind of like flavor profiles. Your limonene will give you your citrusy, your pinene will give you your more earthy. However, on the other hands of things, they can provide sometimes an adverse response to our bodies. So if you have allergies and you take a lot of limonene terpene products, you more than likely will have an antihistamine reaction and find that you're sneezing or you might be itchy inside. So this is why it is kind of important to get a hold, if you possibly can, on a little bit of information on strains. Now, of course, in those areas where it's not so accessible and we are looking about it from a harm reduction perspective, a lot of these places have these things called THCA. And this
Mm-hmm.
THCA is a form of marijuana that is not, or cannabis, that is not essentially psychoactive in a sense until you heat it up. So that will allow for you to always be able to walk into a store who's selling this, and you should be able to ask, hey, can I see a card that has the name of the strain that you're showing me? Can I see the THC? Because if they're selling it
Mm-hmm.
in smoke shops, they should be able to provide you some information. And if you see that something is 29, 30%, that's probably unnatural.
Mm. 29 or 30%. Anything above that is just, they just
Honestly, anything
doing.
above 25%. But now, sometimes you want a little razzle to your dazzle. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what I'm also noticing, and like you said, I think this is important, as we're not, don't get it twisted. We're not condoning, say, yes, go and smoke it. This is good for you. This is giving you information, even if you don't smoke, how a partaking of knowing all the facts before you partake. Um, and doing your own research. I think this is, you got to do your own research. Like there's certain things people don't realize, as you can never OD on cannabis. It won't, that's one substance. And how you were saying with cannabis, and being that we have receptors in our body, it's also like a protector for us. So when you had said how our body processes, I tell people, if it's something your body needs, it's going to hold on to it longer, or it can benefit from. It has natural aspects that your body can become one. So it takes, on the average, 3 weeks to a month for cannabis to get out your system. And that is why if it's other drugs that are synthetic, crack cocaine, things of that nature, it's out in 3 days because your body can't, it has nothing that the body needs. So that's why we have to understand it has a balance. It's a sacred plant. And if anything we use out of balance can become harmful. So as we talk about harmful, what would you say is where somebody needs to recognize when is going from just recreational use to possible dependence?
First thing is frequency. How often are we needing it? And when I say needing it, again, microdosing is a little different. So if I have this same piece of whatever I am using to consume and I utilize it all day throughout periods of the day, but I'm only using one thing, that is building a more intentional and probably safer relationship with the plant. Now, with that being said, we need to see what do we need to do, what are actions do we need to take to kind of use this. So is it just cleaning, or is it having conversations, is it being able to interact with society, because those are starting to teeter more on this version of avoidance, also
Mhm,
classified as numbing sometimes by clinicians, is that we don't want to remove ourselves from life experiences by the plant.
mhm,
We don't
mhm,
want to use it as our main coping tool. It should kind of be sitting alongside us, helping
mhm,
us gain clarity or connection or relaxation, or sometimes to promote eating, reducing
mhm,
nausea, whatever we're seeking. But it really should not be for the reason of avoidance, or honestly should not be used for heavy partying, mixing it with other drugs.
mhm. And that's when it becomes, that's when we take it out of its purpose of the medicinal part of it when it becomes more recreational aspect of that. So what will red flags be? I always ask this, but in general, because I tell people it's like if you smoking and or using and partaking and you can't pay your bills, or you on probation and you cannot stop smoking and you're on probation, then that's when it gets to a point of a little dependence on it, that you're not even the basic rules, things that you need to sustain are being impacted by your choice of this substance.
Yes,
And I
ma'am.
think that's when we have to. Now, another interesting thing, I have a background in the mental health, substance abuse as well. And some of my thoughts of how we treat substance abuse was, I'm not a system person anyhow, but it's just interesting on how when I was doing groups, I just felt uncomfortable sometimes when there was groups and people were coming in with addiction to meth and crack, and then the marijuana user is in the same group. Do you feel it's a difference in treatment? I mean, anything with an addiction is still an addiction, but how do you feel in regards to treatment of someone using cannabis compared to someone in a group with those using meth? Do you feel like all of those should be in one group, or do you feel it's different? What do you think?
This one's a rough one, because I used to do assessments basically determining this. And I think that it honestly needs to probably be treated separately. We should have forms of plant based substances, whether that's psilocybin or cannabis, probably grouped as one thing. And then we should keep, our other substances unless there's a comorbidity. Now, if we're talking, hey, I sit here and I use a lot of alcohol and cannabis, I'm going to send you to the group where everyone probably needs to use different forms of processing.
Mm-hmm.
But the conversations that are had, even breaking apart the taboo around cannabis versus other drugs, the level of uncomfortability cannabis users have had being placed in those groups almost does them a disservice. It puts them in a place where they feel shut down or don't feel that they can speak freely because they can't relate.
Mm-hmm. Or not feeling understood in the choice that
Yes,
they
ma'am.
have. So I would say, bottom line, be real with yourself and use them. But and understanding, does cannabis help you feel or help you avoid? I think that's that crossroad there. Is it helping you to feel, or is it helping you to avoid things? And anytime we avoid anything and use something to bypass is when we have to address that root issue of why are you doing all this to avoid it instead of just addressing it. So when we talk about Also, I would say those who are using, and the importance to understand, especially if you have mental health issues, is you got to know the source. We have to, and I know a lot of people feel like, oh, regulation is the government's in control. Okay, you're gonna have to make some choice if this is informed consent on what you're choosing, because you can, unless you personally know a grower that's taking pride into what they're harvesting, then the dispensaries may be a little safer for you, because honestly, you guys, and working this field, substance abuse and the criminal justice, some of it's being laced, and that is what's causing more of the adverse conditions than actually the plant itself. When you hear loud, when you talk about, oh, they smoking that loud, tell them a little bit. We were talking about that. Is
Yes,
the
ma'am.
smell should be the warning.
The smell should absolutely be the warning. And I think this is important for people who use concentrates, for example, because we can't always assume that people want to use flour. But
Mhm.
concentrates have a certain heavier smell uh, from like the vape cartridges and dabs, those kinds of things. So when you smell that on your flour, even before you burn it, your receptors should go up that I might not want to smoke this. Um, There's history of using embalming fluid. There is
Mhm.
history of now people, of course, fentanyl is something very unfortunate to be cognizant of, but is now a thing. There's been history of gasoline as well being used to kind of
Mhm.
enhance the flavors to your cannabis. And
Gasoline
honestly,
enhancing the flavors.
it enhances the flavors, quote unquote.
Mhm. Okay.
So I would steer far away from um anything that you really can't recognize. If it doesn't smell right, stay away
Mhm.
from it. And this is
Mhm.
also important too to know about edibles, is because you really can't smell it.
Right, right, right.
Don't consume the whole edible.
Mhm. Mhm.
Take
'Cause,
time.
and even with edibles, why that whole intake of preference, because with edibles, you don't, once it's in your system, you don't have control. You know, if you are smoking, you can back up off of it. But edibles, once it's in your system, it's in your system until it's released from your system, which can take 24 to 48 hours, depending on how much you take. So that's why, again, you have to be around those who and have the education for it. Because I've seen people that take edibles and they have such a bad reaction because a lot of them think they dying and they never ever want to address anything dealing with, that's their experience with cannabis. But it was like, if you can go in with the knowledge to avoid the trauma from the use, then it can balance it out. And I think, again, just being aware, having the information to can help you with that. And like, I'm glad what you said, that a lot of people choose not to use it by smoking because of their lungs, and so there are other paths, whether it's earth teas,
Yes,
um,
ma'am.
liquid, drops,
Bombs.
that too. So it's different alternatives, and I think that's what you have to do your own discovery, because it's different from different people and what their body is able to receive in it. So before we leave out here, leave, and we'll talk a little bit what you got coming up. What do you feel a healthy relationship with cannabis looks like?
Always intention first. Showing gratitude. And honestly, this is with the water we drink. Show gratitude for what it can provide for you so that it can work with you and not against you.
Mhm. That's it.
Respect it.
Respected, mindfulness, intention. And even something like when we talk about the use is, are you using it as a stress reliever that you're subconscious of using? I've had a lot of clients when I ask, well, what are you doing when you smoke or partaking? And some people, I'm doing this, I'm working and doing this. And it's like eating. People can eat, and if they're doing this, working on the computer and working on that, and then after you realize the whole sandwich is gone, you're like, oh, I didn't even realize I ate it, and then eat another one,
Mhm.
because you didn't have a chance for those receptors to register that you are full now, because it was you weren't even mindful of what you were doing. So it's setting intention, mindfulness. I always say, instead of smoking 3 joints, why not just do 3 inhales and set your intention on what it is you want to bring in and what it is you want to release? So again, it's even like food, as we tell people with mindfulness that are trying to stop eating, is take time to chew your food up. Enjoy the flavor of it. Enjoy what it is. You may not eat the whole thing. It's like that piece of cake may call you, but don't have to eat the whole piece of cake. And so that moderation of allowing it to bring in the benefit, whatever, and be present with it, may can reduce the overconsumption of it because you're really partaking in the elevation of what it can offer you as well. And like I said, some people may not like our conversations because they may automatically say, "Oh, it's no, it's bad. You can't use it." So I always say this is information for anybody. Like we're saying, we're giving information to take to do your own research, to ask questions, do the history, know where your substance is coming from. You know, you got to take responsibility for that. And if the people can't explain what it is you have, what brand, what strain, then you don't even need to fool with them. You're putting yourself at a situation, particularly if you already have pre-existing mental health issues, because there's some that have had previous mental health and they use and it triggers and can cause um, uh, mental health issues in that aspect. So hopefully this, like we said, this was just a brief conversation or brief presentation on this day. I don't know if any of the people that are listed have any questions while we're live, if they want to ask, because it's such a taboo. That was one of the things, especially being in North Carolina, and even like from older clientele that want to use, that have issues with cancer, chronic pain, that has been noted that can assist in these. They don't want to go and talk to anybody about it because they're afraid. They don't want to go to nephews and these are like, "Can you get me some?" Because they're like, "What? Unc, you want to take?" But it's the thing. We want to provide a safe place as professionals for people who do choose to engage, to understand the importance and also understand not only the benefits or the downside in using, especially if you're on other type of medications as well that can have contradictions to it. And so that's what our roles as medical cannabis advisors are, is to assist that and even put an assessment, do an assessment and put a plan together to help you meet the goal. Because again, just because it's there doesn't mean you have to take cannabis forever. It could be something that you need to help regulate some things and then cease. Somebody did have a question in the group. Kiara, where did you learn about this issue or receive your training? Hey, that's a good question.
That is a great question. Well, Asha and I actually received this training a couple years ago, and we, if anybody's interested in this training, we can more than likely connect you to the lady who did it. But it
Mm-hmm.
opened the pathways to a topic that we were both very, very passionate about. Um, just finding, I could do a whole long spiel on the addiction studies thing, but honestly and truly, cannabis is something that I think has been so taboo for so long and was introductory to me getting into the substance abuse space, that it was like, why are we not learning more and more about it? Now we honor, especially in a Shakti wellness, holistic forms of use. So as soon as we had that door kind of open for us, we just kind of continue to learn more and more information about it and be able to develop a program behind it.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, we heard about it because not only we have so many clients that do use and had questions, but because of being seen as a plant friendly agency, most of our clients were able to come in and feel comfortable about talking about it without being judged. And that's the thing, we're not here to judge you, but if this is a choice, then we need to know all about it so we can help you make the most appropriate decisions and the use of it if you're going to use it as well and help in that aspect. So it was a wonderful course. And if anybody is interested, and I don't know if she's still teaching it, but she was a nurse and a clinical mental health nurse that developed this program to help those in the profession that want to guide their clients as mental health professionals in the use of cannabis. And like you said, yes, that stigma has stopped so much. So hopefully with these changes that are occurring and more acceptance and changing the classification, because that's the thing, they couldn't even do studies with cannabis because of the classification that it was in, that even in universities and teaching colleges and schools could not use it to even do studies. So now that the regulation has changed in the classification, we may see more studies being conducted and being able to use to get more empirical information on the use of it as well in that aspect. So
Yes,
definitely
ma'am.
that.
And supporting outside research from places where it's more accepted. So, looking at places like South America, Asia, how cannabis has been used well before the United States even knew what it was. And it has been transformed into so many different things.
Mhm. So last, before we head up out of here, we want to give you some information of a group that is going to begin May 19th that Kiara will be leading. This is a 4 week group on cannabis and mental health where we will go into more details. Kiara, tell them a little bit about what you will be going over in this 4 week group.
Yes, so this forward group allows for really building a relationship of increasing awareness for more informed use if there's a decide to continue using for cannabis. But in the 4 weeks, we talk about the foundations and the history of cannabis. We do talk about how the body kind of responds and how we can develop a plan that's more aligned for our body. We include meditation and breath work, so kind of incorporating some activities, talking specifically about mental health objectives, getting more defined with how anti anything medications, mental health medications, can actually still have effects with the use of cannabis, alongside, of course, those other substances that we were discussing earlier. And then, of course, wanting to talk about intention, triggers, explorations, and building a plan for future use.
There it is. So that was all that we wanted to present to y'all. I'm putting in the chat the website address to register to go to find the green group if you would like to sign up for it. So it will begin May 19th and it's a 4 week group. So I encourage you to sign up now. The cost is 222. It can be done in payment arrangement, so there's no excuse. And I always say, if you smoking, you got the money. No. but, but in there, hopefully you will make a choice. This way, a choice. This where it goes in. If you choose to partake, then take invest in all of it. That's going to help you in the journey. If that's a choice that you choose to partake in this. So hopefully we've been able to give you just some tips on this day to provide some information and education so that you can make the best decisions for yourself. We want to give you both sides of the information. And I think that's important for us as we take more control and accountability for our health and be in a better position to make decisions because you have the knowledge. Anything you want to share before we head out?
Thank y'all for your time today, and I hope y'all enjoy your 420.
That's it. Happy 420 for those and enjoy. And hopefully, we'll see you guys in the green group that Kiara will be leading. So I'm thankful for those who did partake, for those who the link got skewed somewhere in there. I will post this on the social media pages for everyone. And I would say those who are here, share it with those that you think could get some benefits from this information, whether they're in therapy, outside of therapists. Me and Kara, we do assessments and plans for those that do use. So she's there in Seattle where I'm pretty sure they got all the wonderful dispensaries. So in the meantime, we are accessible for anybody anywhere in that capacity. And it is a very confidential assessment. If you were to get one, we do evaluations more through Zoom on the if you and many don't even want to do it Zoom because they're still dealing with the stigma if they're coming to get consultation. So it's also okay for phone. But the green group will be a virtual online group, so hopefully you guys will sign up for that. If not, pass it on to someone you feel that could benefit from it. And if you have any questions or anything, you know where to find us here at Ashakti Wellness. So we look forward to seeing you. Bye bye.